Okay, this particular machine is called a stitching horse. Now, that ain't what this video is about. What I'm going to show you is this tool, a stitching awl, but I thought I better explain what this, all this is really is a clamp that you run with your foot. You sit on it and you can stitch. But all it does is clamp the material you're working in so it isn't shifting around. But this is what I'm really going to show you. It's a stitching awl for repairing like any leather thing, or like this is nylon. I've got an old dog harness that was starting to fray. I'm going to patch. This happens to be a nylon, wax nylon thread, but I like to use a wax linen. You can get that too. This particular model, it's got a handle that screws apart, and you can carry spare needles and the wrench for changing the needles. She's pretty self-contained. And in fact, you take this needle out, put it in there, and then you've got something that's very easy to carry and just very handy. You can use it for repairing shoes and stuff. I mean, like backpack straps. Just a very handy tool. This is one from Tandy. I think it's like $20 for this setup. I know the first one I bought was like $5, so they've come up some, but they're very handy. The one I use most of the time is this one, and I don't even know what brand this is. Stewart. The only reason I like this one, this has a spool that's inside, but you can also hook right onto a whole spool of thread and feed it through this hole in the back, so you can do longer projects without having to splice so much. It's a good tool, but like I say, the other one is a little more portable. But I'll put that piece in there and show you how that machine works. It's very simple, really. Okay, like I said, this one was starting to fray. I'm going to find a spot. Okay, that's the spot right there. So what I'm going to do is lay a piece of this nylon in each side of it and stitch it together, and that's where the stitching horse comes in handy, because I can clamp it right in there. And like with these pieces of nylon, you got to first burn the ends so that they don't fray. See, that's all this big contraption does, is hold that piece in there. Okay. See, this needle has got a groove on one side that the thread runs in that groove. I'm going to run out some line. You poke it through. When you pull it back, it'll bulge up on one side. Now to start out, you go like that, pull this piece through. But then the next stitch, you push it through, come back, then you go through that loop with the loose end. Then you pull it back and you get your spot where it's doubled over right in the middle. Pull it tight and then go on. And it goes pretty good. I mean, I've done real big projects with this. But where it is, I mean, like I say, this one just handy to have along for emergency repairs. Especially like on shoes, man, because if you got a shoe that the sole comes loose, you can slap it back together with this and it'll work. Or backpack straps, or I know on my Carhartt coveralls, just the other day I had one of the buckles broke loose, which is unusual for Carhartt actually, but makes me think maybe they're starting to make those in China. But I was able to patch it together very quickly with this tool. And for what all they can do, for like 20 bucks, it's a smart investment. And it's interesting to do too. I mean, and you can get, like I said, it'll sew leather or canvas, or even this nylon webbing. If you're doing leather, it's kind of nice. If you actually soak the leather first, it's a little easier to stitch. And then when you pull the stitches too, they'll pull down in there tighter. But it's not completely necessary. But you see, that goes along very well. I'm about to turn her anyway, so I'll take it off and show you. But see, it makes a nice stitch line. And if you want it, like for spacing stitches, it doesn't show on this, but on leather you can see it sometimes. To make a deal that's like a wheel with cogs in it that you run across the leather first and it'll mark. It's almost like a spur, and it marks so you can get your stitches exactly the same. But for most things it doesn't really matter. You're just trying to get it to hold together. But I'll shut the camera off now and finish this up. Okay, I'm coming right to the end of her. And there's a thing I always do. The last stitch, rather than leave the knot in the middle, I'd go like that. That way I can pull it through. And make the knot on the outside. And this stuff is incredibly strong. Okay, cut it off. And then, rather than just leave the ends open like that, I always burn them and squash them in there so they don't fray. And you don't need that stitching horse. I mean, it's very handy. I like it because you can keep working around. But you can see it does a nice splice that'll be strong, and I'll never have to worry about that again. But it's a handy tool, I mean, to carry. Especially, like I say, if you take the needle off, put the needle in there, then you got a short piece with no sharp edges on it that can really save you a lot of headache.